Okay, hello, it's Hamilton Fan 1705 here, back with a new video. Basically what I'm going to do now is do a final predictions video for the driver lineup for 2015, and for the teams that have already confirmed their lineup, I'm going to say what I think the season holds. I'm going to say that about every team, but I'm going to start off with them all in Constructors' Championship order from this year. Mercedes, obviously they have retained both of their drivers, and I think they're going to stay. They're still going to be the team to beat next year, considering they probably have, out of all the manufacturers, they're probably like the best at like making a car, an engine that works together and is quick. Obviously, as proven this year with their dominant car. I don't think they're going to be quite as dominant as they were this year, but still, I think they're going to be quite quick. They're still going to have like the quickest car, and probably still going to take both championships if they have a car. Obviously, they need to sort out reliability for next year, because if they don't have a significant advantage, then and they're as unreliable as they were this year, then they're not going to win the championship. I think if they can sort out reliability, they'll still win the title. So that's the first team. Red Bull. I think they will be, obviously they've got Daniel Ricciardo and Danny Kvyat. Kvyat, I think, will match Ricciardo and outpace him at some, because he has probably been the best rookie all season. I mean, there was Kevin Magnussen this year, but he has just, but Magnussen's not really matched Button that much, even though he does have potential, but I don't really think this year he was like ready. He should have really waited till 2015 really for a drive at a top team such as McLaren. But Kvyat, I think, obviously was ready, and obviously that explains how fast he was. And I think really he outpaced Verne, but the only reason why he finished behind in the championship was because of poor reliability. Because there was he had a lot more failures on the car than Verne did. So I think they will be a lot closer to Mercedes than they were last year. Or not last year, this year. They will be a lot closer to Mercedes. Both will probably win races. I think they'll be Mercedes' closest challenge and probably challenging for the title. Okay, so Williams. I think they should have been a bit disappointed with you, to say the least, because I don't know how they didn't win a race, because in the second half of the season, I think they had a quicker car than Red Bull in the second half of the year. And some people may think this is a bit of a silly quote, but I think they did have a quicker car, in my opinion. And if they can continue, obviously they've got the Mercedes unit, they've still got that strong lineup, and I think they're going to win races with both of their drivers next year. And probably finish third in the Constructors. So Ferrari, obviously this has probably been it's going to be most anticipated, with Sebastian Vettel and Kimi Raikkonen. I think they'll be quicker than they were this year. But to be honest, I'm not sure they're going to challenge for the title. They have quite a way to go, really, just to be able to get back on championship terms. Obviously, they've had their worst season in ages this year. But they'll probably win races. I'm not sure they're going to be on terms with the leading three, though. But they will probably win races. Or Vettel will probably win races. I'm not sure about Raikkonen. So, and next year, I think will be Kimi Raikkonen's last season, because I think he's passed his time at his best in F1. So, McLaren Honda, this is where all the speculation is. Pretty much a done deal that Alonso is going to go there. So, the real speculation is who's going to be alongside him. To be honest, I know this is really unfortunate for Button fans. I do actually feel quite sorry for Jensen, that I guess he would have wanted to decide to retire. But I think that he's going to have to retire. Which is a shame, because to be fair, he has been in F1 for 15 years, and McLaren ditched Perez, who matched Button at the end of 2013, so Magnussen could come in, not because of anything to do with his driving, and they back Magnussen quite heavily. So, to be honest, I think, and also the way that Button was acting in the paddock and everything, like the way he seemed to be saying goodbye to everyone, especially with his donuts after he crossed the line. He just seemed to be saying goodbye to everyone. So to be honest, I think it's going to be Alonso and Magnussen at McLaren. I think Magnussen will be given a second chance. Obviously, McLaren, as I said, McLaren ditched Perez so they could give Magnussen a chance. Not anything to do with Perez's pace. And I think they're going to be a lot stronger. I think both will win races next year. I think Magnussen's got a lot of potential. This year I don't really think he was ready, despite the fact that he got a podium in his debut. But next year, if he can use the wins to improve, and then I think he's going to do quite well. But I would feel, if this is true, which I think it might be, I would feel a bit sorry for all Button fans, basically also because they went into the Abu Dhabi not knowing if it was his last race or not. So, but sad, I think that's what's going to happen because of the team's history, how they seem to back Magnussen quite heavily. Okay, so the next team, Force India, obviously they have confirmed their lineup of Perez and Hulkenberg. This, I think, despite the fact that they made a mistake with Aero, so they're my favourite team, so I'm maybe being a bit biased here, but despite the fact they made a mistake with Aero this year, they claimed it's not the reason why they lost pace in the second half of the season was not because of budget, it was all because of they made a mistake with the Aero, which they say they've learned from for 2015. Despite that, I think they should have been proud of this. They should be proud of this year. Basically, because towards the in the start of the season, they probably had the third quickest car in the early races, and the only thing that stopped them from getting their maiden win this year was Mercedes' dominance. If it wasn't for that, then they would have probably won at least a race, particularly in Bahrain. So next year, I think they'll be stronger. They'll probably be on terms with teams like Ferrari and McLaren, particularly at the start of the year. So, and could they get their first win? Maybe, but depends on how quick. But again, it depends on how quick Mercedes are, if they have such a big advantage like they did this year. Okay, so now the next team I'm going to go through is Toro Rosso. Obviously, they've confirmed Max Verstappen, who I think is going to do really well next year. I actually think that he might actually give some of the big guys a hard time, the big teams a hard time next year, especially considering his pace in that first practice session. He was not that far off Kvyat at all. And Kvyat's gone to Red Bull. I think Verstappen will be a future world champion, considering how quick he's looked. So, I think he's going to have a really promising season next year. Alongside him, this was speculation because just half an hour ago, Verne announced he will not be driving for Toro Rosso next year, which is a real shame, really, considering when Vettel moved to Ferrari, it looked like there was a chance that Verne could go there. But pretty much, really, there's two drivers who can get that seat, and that is Carlos Sainz and Alex Lynn. And I think it's quite hard to choose between them, really, because Carlos Sainz obviously won Formula Renault, and Alex Lynn won GP3, which are really fairly similar in terms of how high up those championships are. Really, they're quite similar with the driving skill as well, but to be honest, I think it's going to go to Alex Lynn, really, because Carlos Sainz, yes, he did win Formula Renault, and he has been hanging around for quite some time, but GP3 is where they race in front of all the F1 bosses. And obviously for 2014, Kvyat got promoted and got that seat at Toro Rosso when there was Antonio Felix da Costa from Formula Renault. So, I think, judging by the past, I think they're going to go for Alexion. So next I'm going to go through is Lotus. Obviously, they've confirmed that they're retaining Grosjean and Maldonado. They'll probably be as strong as they were in 2013, to be honest, considering that they've got the Mercedes power unit. I'm not really sure how well Maldonado is going to do. Yes, he did win a race in Catalonia in 2012, but apart from that, he's not really looked that good, and he's been quite a way off Grosjean this year in particular. So Grosjean, I think, will win races next year. His first win is overdue, in my opinion. Maldonado will probably be a consistent point scorer, but I doubt he's going to win a race. Okay, so the next team I'm going to go through is, obviously this is a really debatable whether they're even going to be on the grid. Obviously, Manor, if they make the grid, they're not going to be called Marussia anymore because of that, because they're not able to pay them anymore. So obviously they'll probably race under their original name, Manor F1, if they can race. Obviously they're the same team, just with a different name if they do make it, but it's really debatable. I think that it's kind of 50-50 whether they're going to make it, because they even folded for a bit after Brazil, but they tried to make it to Abu Dhabi, but just left it a little bit too late. But if they do make it, regarding their lineup, I think they're going to keep Chilton because of all the money that he would bring. And I think that they'd actually go for Palmer, considering one, he brings a lot of money, and two, obviously it would give them a bigger chance of scoring points, which would mean a lot to them financially. So if they make it, I think they're going to go for Chilton and Palmer. One, because of money, also because both bring money to the team, and which would obviously help them financially. And Chilton obviously improved quite a lot this year, and Palmer obviously as a GP2 champion, he would be quite competitive, especially considering his pace in GP2. It's not Caterham, there's Sauber still. Ericsson and Nasser. With their lineup this year, for next year, to be honest, what I think is going to happen with Sauber next year is they're going to start the season similarly to what they did this year. But they're going to improve and score points as the season goes on. Obviously, Ericsson is improving. Obviously, he brings money. And Naz, we know, is quite competitive. But I actually think they will be back to scoring points next year. But in the second half of the year. So finally, we go to Caterham. And again, they're kind of... They have probably a greater chance than Manor do of being on the grid next year, but Caterham, it's a really hard one who they're going to choose for their lineup. To be honest, what I think is going to happen at Caterham is I'm going to go for Stevens and Sainz. Because Will Stevens, obviously he made his debut in Abu Dhabi, and actually did quite well for someone who drove the car for the first time. At first, I thought when they decided to put him in, I thought that was a silly decision. But then, when he raced, we thought it was a really good decision. And He also brings money to the team, which obviously means a lot to them financially. So, I think Will Stevens will be their first driver. Which would mean, if my predictions are correct, then we'd have 5 Brits on the grid next year. Which would be quite impressive. And as I said, Sainz, I think, will be alongside him. Obviously, with Lynn, my prediction at Toro Rosso. Because earlier in the year, Sainz was related with the Caterham drive. And obviously, if he gets overlooked by Toro Rosso so they can have Alex Lynn, I think they'd probably he could go there. If Toro Rosso do go for Sainz, it's a really hard one. I think they're going to keep Kobayashi there, then, to be honest. Because obviously he knows the team very well. But that's my prediction on what if Mercedes aren't dominant next year, I think next year could be a thrilling season. Could be as unpredictable as 2012, to be honest. Because if Mercedes aren't so dominant, we could be looking at 7 race-winning teams next year. Which would mean that maybe even 8 if Verstappen is quicker than expected. So, really, I think next year's going to be quite a good season. Especially with the technical regulations as well, with the high standards of racing that we had this year, even with Mercedes dominance. Hey, thank you very much for watching. We'll see you for my next video.